Hey everybody. Hey everybody. Listen, the Republicans this year with Donald Trump at their, as their leader. Guess what? They, as much as a lot of people would like to think that they're going to get quashed tomorrow by the Democrats, I'm going to say one thing. I don't think so. I think they're going to do. I think they're going to do a lot. They're going to perform a lot better. Or in some cases, I think they may actually really outrun the Democrats this time. I think the Democrats are going to get crushed, not so much in the Senate as they are. I mean, well, I do think that they are going to get somewhat crushed in the Senate. However, I also think that they are also not going to. But I think they're really going to get crushed in the House of Representatives, to be perfectly candid. The problem is that even though Donald Trump has a long history of sounding like a complete and total Neanderthal, let me tell you something. He's not as stupid. He's a lot smarter, actually, than a lot of Democrats and certainly a lot of the media would care to admit. He's not a look as much as incompetent as he is in terms of leadership. Yeah, he's not a very competent leader. Let me put it to you that way. But let me tell you something. When it comes to actually working crowds and actually working people in terms of elections and such, you got to think a lot more. You need to think much more differently than you would with a conventional candidate. Because Donald Trump is not a conventional president. Also, he just laid out a massive trap to the Democrats. I would say starting about starting about 3 or 4 months ago, that's when he finally laid out a trap for them, and they walked right into it. Now, this is not to say that the Democrats are stupid. They're not. No, a lot of them are actually very smart, but they're not people smart. And Donald Trump is very people smart. Let me put it to you that way. He's not an intellectual, but he's not stupid. Anyway, the whole anyway by holding by Mitch McConnell also carrying in with this. Guess what? He also shored up the Republicans in the House of Representatives. I mean, in the Senate. Donald Trump, in the meantime, is helping the Republicans now, basically get an even more comfortable margin within the House of Representatives. So if you get those two factors together, guess what? You have a recipe for him to get even emboldened to do things that are even crazier than he's doing right now. The problem is the Democrats, by trying to go to the suburban voters, which is not a bad ploy. However, they overlooked one very massive detail. And this is the detail that Donald Trump is actually exploiting right now. Or he has been exploiting actually over the past I would say over the past 3 to 4 months in some form or another. Donald Trump has been going to low income, well, shall we say, fixed income white voters in rural areas and in some ex-urban areas too. Now, many of those whites don't. Now, many of these white voters that he went after, many of them don't have. Many of them don't have college degrees. I mean, and a lot of those are some of the same people that Democrats and I would say some people on the left. And I'm not going to. I'll be very candid and say one thing. probably done my fair share of deriding them too. And to them who are listening to this, I want to say I'm sorry for that, because I realize just because you don't have a college degree doesn't mean that you're stupid. Because a lot of them actually aren't that stupid. A lot of them are actually. But here's the thing: Donald Trump has been communicating more or less directly to them. The Democrats have been talking over and past them. Because, again, they're going after the people that are with the higher income levels who think that, well, okay, maybe we should get them all outraged about what's going on. The biggest outrage right now is the fact that the Democrats and, to a large degree, many Republicans for that matter, they had been overlooking one critical detail. Ever since I would say possibly basically the late 1960s, actually, starting it around Richard Nixon, basically. Richard Nixon really got the ball rolling with bringing white supremacy back, or at least in phases. The Republican Party mostly had been in some, in phases made white supremacy, making it all sexy again. And Donald Trump is just the culmination of it. I mean, he's the direct result of it. But that had been building over time. The Democrats, to their credit, had been largely combating this up until the Clinton administration, and even before that. But the Democrats, because they've been largely, how could I put this? They've been largely indecisive about how to best go about it. And when they finally do get to doing something about it, guess what? It makes them lose. The problem is, anytime they finally go about doing something, they lost public support. Because the problem is, the Democrats have, for too long, the Democrats have had the problem of dithering way too much. And their dithering also gives Trump. So while the Republicans were basically robbing us blind and using white supremacy, more or less, in some form or another, for political expedience, so as to basically distract the rest of the electorate and have them argue over, hot button cultural issues and such. That's a distractionary measure. And the Democrats always play right into that. And the Democrats, in one form or another, had always been playing into it. And they're doing that. And let me tell you something, they're doing that same thing again. Now, you want to know what insanity is? That's insanity. Because if you do the same thing over and over and over again, each time expecting a different result, I think that means that your current strategy is not working and that you need a new strategy. But the problem is the leadership in Congress for the Democrats don't seem to understand that. And it's because of their dithering and their, quote unquote, trying to say, oh, we got to tack to the center, tack to the center, tack to the center. Or no, we have to go to the far right, far right, far right. No. Go to the left and take a very hard turn to the left, because that will present an actual alternative. And the problem is, for many years, the Democrats have really not been providing much of an alternative. Yeah, they're better in terms of implementing policy. That is true. But the problem is they're not very good at actually getting people behind it until they're out of power. It's only once people start to actually feel the effects of it, that's when they start to back the Democrats, more or less. But the Democrats cannot continue to rely on this strategy. Because first of all, they're not really they don't really defend their own ideas. That's part of the problem. The Republicans have no ideas. I mean, they're bankrupt in ideas. But they shout at the tops of their lungs, and they make sure that basically, right now, since they do have the levers of power, guess what? They are absolutely denying the Democrats, legitimacy of actually existing. The reason for it is actually very simple. So whenever they talk about, oh, well, we got to take care of that Democrat Party, actually what they're talking about is anybody who doesn't fit our conform to our image of what an American is, aka Lily White. Now, for many years, the people that had, or where that message, let me put it this way, where that has resonated the strongest is in the bastion that used to be heavily Democratic, which is called the South. No, not all Southerners are racist. Let me put it to you that way. Some of the leading figures for civil rights and such, and some of them who actually are leading the fight to try to maintain them, many of them are actually Southerners. And some of them are actually white Southerners too. So, like I said, you have both sides going on down in the South. But anyhow, the Republicans at this point, well, Trump basically made it to this way by constantly doing a lot of the race baiting and such, which he really should not be doing because he's basically bringing he's helping to make white supremacy basically a legitimate political idea, which in my eyes actually isn't. But I know a lot of other people who would also disagree with that line of thinking. Anyway, the other thing that we also have to bear in mind is that when we go to the polls tomorrow, those of us who haven't voted early, I have because I vote absentee. Well, then again, I live in San Mateo County in California, which is permanent absent vote by mail anyway. So there's that. But the thing is that part of the reason that you're also seeing a lot of the push for really decreasing the electorate and such. Here's the thing. What we're going to need to do going forward, should the Republicans perform much better than was actually anticipated, at least in the media is concerned. Here's what we got to do. First of all, we need to take a deep breath and try to think, okay, what are we doing that's not effectively presenting a real clear alternative to what the Republicans are trying to do? Because we really need to rethink what we're doing. What it's going to mean is that we're going to have to basically, here's what we're going to do. Should the Democrats lose tomorrow's election, and by all accounts at this point, they're showing signs that they actually will, we're going to have to do a few things. One, we're going to have to basically really force a major vote in the House Republican caucus, as well as the Senate Democratic caucus, and force a vote for new leadership. That's the first step. The second step is to get a new the second thing we got to do is get new leadership also in the DNC, because the current leadership has proven themselves to be completely incompetent when it's really when we are in desperate need of basically reining Donald Trump in. And for the past 2 years, the Democratic leadership has basically shown us that they're really not up to the task of doing it. Now, a lot of people will be telling me, basically, if they see, if anybody's watching this, I know a lot of you are going to be telling me things like, oh, well, JG, you ought to be pushing for, say, Trump's impeachment. Yeah, impeachment, really? First of all, there's a lot of problems with that argument, but that's for a different video. I'll respond to those in a different video. I'm not gonna waste too much more time on, beating a dead horse in this instance. The biggest problem when it actually, or let me put it this way. We could go the impeachment route, but the problem is that it's not just a numbers game in the Senate or it's getting the articles through an even more heavily Republican House of Representatives. That's not going to happen. The Republicans have shown pretty much that, look, Donald Trump has an almost 90% support rate among the Republican base. And because he has a 90% or so support rate among base Republicans, the congressional Republicans, aka the House and Senate Republicans, they can't afford to break with Trump, because to do so means also throwing out their political careers, and they can't do that. They need Trump much more than than a lot of them actually care to admit in this instance. So that's another thing. We also need to be continuing to push through policy, and basically pushing from time to time to see whether or not we can get some traction, time after time after time, of basically forcing the Republicans to do something that their base is actually clamoring for. Anyway, one of the things that a lot of people have been saying, and here on Radio Fire Radio, for example, with Darren Cousins, him saying that actually a majority of Republicans say, for example, are supporting Medicare for everybody. He's correct. And the polls have been saying that. But I can also personally tell him that he's also correct in that assessment too. Let me tell you something. I am, as many people know, I happen to be a registered Democrat. Well, it's the only way to get any traction here, especially if you're from the left. Well, whatever. No, I mean, I could change parties, but I'm not going to bother right now. Anyway, that's not the point. The point I'm making is that I'm related to someone. I actually have a parent that happens to be a registered Republican. My pop. No, he's not a Bible thumper. Let me put it to you that way. He's really not a Bible thumper at all. No, my pop's an insurance salesman. And because he's a small business owner, he's a fiscal conservative. And because of that, that's why he's more or less a registered Republican. In terms of social issues, he doesn't care. about keeping one, you know, keeping one group away from power, blah, blah, blah. Blah. That's not how we, that's not my pop's mentality. My pop's mentality is basically keeping the government basically keeping the government out of, any of the decisions that he decides to make in terms of his business ventures. That's it. He doesn't want the government telling him how to run his business. Or it's some form part of it. It's just, it's primarily for that reason. But here's the thing. Because my pop happens to be an insurance salesman, let me tell you something. I know this from, working in his office. So I kind of have an insider's view of this. But again, that's for a different video. Anyway, my point though is that because of what my pop has been doing, now my pop's been in the insurance business for, I would say, over 40 years or so. Well, let me tell you something. He is an absolute supporter and in some cases a very strong proponent of making Medicare available for everybody. And here's the thing. You could say right now as a business owner, one of the things that he'll say very clearly is that make it a payroll item. That's all you got to do is make it a payroll item, and that's the end of the story. Because, look, we all pay into Medicare through our paychecks. And if you're an employer, that does one thing for you. Yeah, you may have to pay a little bit extra in terms of, in terms of payroll taxes and such. But that's the thing. If you make it a payroll item, guess what? It means that it's less overhead. Now, unions are going to love that, and so too will businesses. Well, small business in particular, they're going to love it too. It means one less thing, overhead. It also means for the unions, what it means is, again, it means more manageable costs for them. So this way they can try to fight for better working conditions and not always have to worry about dealing with healthcare. Trust me, the unions really don't like the way that everything is set up currently. They don't like it at all. They want Medicare for everybody. Small business owners want Medicare for everybody. The only people that don't want Medicare for everybody are the very people that make the most amount of money in terms of when it comes to healthcare, aka health insurance, the pharmaceuticals, the big hospitals. They get a good chunk of that money. They get all that chunk of the money, plus all the state governments and the District of Columbia's, quote unquote, district government, actually, not their local government. But anyway, the fact is, all of them, they get a massive chunk of that money. They don't want to give it up. The states are going to fight that thing tooth and nail. Which is why right now we're seeing a lot of resistance from it because they're getting lobbied for that, not just by the three industries that I told you about before, but it's also their state governments. And particularly a lot of the red states, they don't want to give up that money. Because licensing insurance agents and regulating insurance, that's been a prerogative of the states for basically the last 240 some odd years, basically. For the past 242 years, it's been the prerogative of the states. It wasn't always federal. That's why it's primarily why you don't always see a lot of regulations in terms of insurance at the federal level. That's why. It's the states, not the feds. So once you get the feds, you yanking all that out, guess what? The states are not happy. They lose a whole chunk of revenue, basically. They don't want to give it up. So it's them and the all the major medical and everybody else who's within the healthcare, the hospitals and such, the hospitals, the insurance, the pharmaceuticals, they don't want to give that up. And I'm talking about the for-profit ones. I'm not talking even, forget the non-profit ones who also don't want to give it up as well. I mean, I'm talking, I'm talking the chains such as Sutter Health and such. Yeah, they don't want to give it up either. Let me, I want to make that really, really clear to everybody. This is what we're dealing with, and so that's one thing we got to keep doing. Is we got to keep pushing policy, even if the Republicans win. Look, the only reason that the Republicans are going to end up winning again is because, again, even as much as corporate America doesn't like what Donald Trump is saying in terms of all the race baiting and such, the fact is he's giving them things in terms of the economics. He's giving them basically everything they want and more. So for them, all the race baiting at this point, to them, it's basically it's a minor annoyance that they'll find some. Let me put it to you this way: it'll be a minor annoyance that they'll more or less tolerate. Because if that's the price they have to pay in order to, keep their tax cuts and such, they'll support it. They'll just stay back basically because there's no upside for a lot of these guys. There's no upside in actually taking a stand against it in some cases or another. Now some do, and some will continue to take, and some will continue to make a stink about it. And the companies that do make a stink about it, guess what? They should be commended. One of those companies is actually Starbucks. Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they could come up with a different way of dealing with other taxes and such. But the point that I'm making is that the companies that actually the companies that are basically saying that they're not going to tolerate this kind of that they personally don't want to tolerate this kind of conduct. I give them a lot of credit for doing that because they're willing to do that as their business model. That's fine. And I commend them for doing that because that's basically sending a very clear message that they're not going to tolerate white supremacy. But other ones, there's other companies, however, going down the line. There are others that are wholehearted supporters of white supremacy. I'll give you an example. Home Depot. Yeah. The CEO of Home Depot is a major Trump supporter. I mean, he's a Bible thumper. Let me put it to you that way. And the guy has been just a complete and total. The guy's behaved like a complete and total. He's just been an absolute prick to, those who don't look like him, more or less. That's one. The former CEO of Papa John's, yeah. Yeah, Papa John himself is also a known white supremacist. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, basically the point that I'm making is start getting organized, to start taking the fight back up again. We're going to have to continue to push Congress, even while it's under Republican control, for another 2 years. We're going to have to continue to force them to do the right thing. this is going to mean sometimes we're going to have to start talking to some people on the right here. I mean, that's the only way that we're going to get the change that we're actually seeking, regardless of who's in power. But right now, here's the thing: start talking to some of your people. If you have any friends who are still who are, conservatives or lean towards the right politically, start talking to them and start making the case at least to them with their wallets. Basically, that's the first place that you can do it. You can tell them basically that if they help out by pushing for if they help us out by pushing for a Medicare for everybody system, for example, or a debt-free college situation, guess what? Tell them that it will save them money. Basically let them know that it's going to save them money in the long run. Yeah, they may have to pitch in a few extra bucks, at least up front, but the savings that they're going to get after that is far going to outweigh the upstarting costs. So if you're going to do it in a way that actually basically do it in a way that appeals to their wallets. Basically, that's all. That's the easiest way to go about it. Now, if you have anything that you want to, I would encourage you to share this video with your friends and family. I would also encourage you to subscribe if you like what you're hearing me say. And if you feel like you want to hear more of what I have to say, I would say subscribe to me. And you can also follow me on Patreon, on Twitter, and Facebook. You can actually help contribute to this on Patreon. There's also I'll also throw up a link for where you can also help to support this channel through PayPal, actually. Anyway, I'm gonna cut it here. I know this has been going on for about over half an hour. I'm sorry. I know I let this thing. I realized I went on kind of a ramble. I kind of rambled on a few too many tangents here, but anyway, I'm gonna kill it here. So yeah, basically, if you like what you see, subscribe, and thanks for watching.